So, my affirmative video about how the US government should increase its development of the Earth's moon for energy, specifically helium-3, was viewed, and then a negative video followed that by my opponent, and this is my rebuttal to that. So, first, my opponent states that a lot of the statistics about how much oil we have left on Earth are constantly changing and fluctuating, and that can kind of make it hard to trust how much oil we actually have left. If the numbers are changing and we're constantly finding more energy or less, it's hard to say how much energy we actually have left. My response to that would be if stats are changing all the time, that means that they're constantly being measured, and even if they're not accurate, they have to be pretty close. I like to kind of relate it to a theory, so not a law, but a theory, which is what scientists constantly test, even though it has been proven many times. It's constantly being tested, and so I like to kind of relate that to how much oil we have left. It's constantly being measured, and that's why those numbers fluctuate like that. And so on the website International Business Times, on an article titled World Energy Day 2014 by a staff reporter on October 22nd, 2014, it says oil update raised 1.1% to 1,687.9 billion barrels, enough to last 53.3 years. And I think that's a really good example of how, yes, the number of how many barrels we have left of oil changed by 1.1%. That means that it was measured again and it changed a little. So, in her second argument, she states that we are constantly evolving as a country here on Earth, and so with this depleting amount of energy, we will, evolve just like we have in the past and come up with a solution to this. And I totally agree, but I think our solution is going to the moon and developing it for oil. The same article that I just cited also states that the challenge facing engineers extracting shale oil is that currently it is so difficult to get at that it actually takes more energy to extract than it gives back in use. In shale formations, natural gas molecules are stuck to the rock and must be detached. It says here the rising cost of oil has also forced governments and oil companies to exploit previously marginal sources of oil from difficult locations such as the deep sea. So here's a perfect example of how we are looking to find oil in areas that we wouldn't normally look, and I think that's an example of evolving, but I think we could use that money that we're using to extract shale oil to go to the moon and develop it for helium-3 and use that as a form of energy. Just like someone had the idea of electric cars, and then someone had the idea of solar paneling, this could be our big idea. Our change is going to the moon and developing it for helium-3. Lastly, she mentions that the space treaty is still very much intact, and it is. In my affirmative, I mentioned that there could be a way around it. On May 31st in 2008, Glenn Harlan Reynolds, in an article titled Who Owns the Moon? The Case for Lunar Property Rights in Maritime Salvage Law, which also deals with property rights beyond national territory, actually being there is key. Those who reach a wreck first and secure the property are generally entitled to a percentage of what they recover. There's even some case allowing that presence to be robotic rather than human. So, yes, the space treaty is still intact, but here is this possible way around it. I know my opponent stated that in the space treaty it is clearly written that no one is allowed to go to the moon, especially for testing nuclear weapons, which I read too, and I've seen that section, and so she mentioned that if the space treaty was annulled or didn't exist, that countries could go to the moon and start testing weapons of mass destruction and nuclear weapons, and it would obviously be very dangerous. But I also think that the space treaty was written and signed so long ago that maybe it's time for a revision. On the on the website professorbainbridge.com called Revising the Outer Space Treaty on July 20th, 2009, it says, Steve Freeland and Donna Lawyer write in the July 20th, 2009 Sydney Morning Herald, the development of space-related technology has grown exponentially since those pioneering steps by Armstrong. Not only has the use of outer space become strategically vital for the major powers, but space-based technologies have become an essential part of daily life. All of us benefit from this when we watch direct satellite broadcasts of the ashes, use GPS systems in our cars, listen to weather forecasts derived from remote sensing satellites, and flying in aircraft that rely on satellite navigation. So, we're using space so much now for a lot of what we have here on Earth. I think it's time to revise that space treaty